Moderna predicts vaccines are going to struggle with the new mutation and says it may take months before pharmaceutical companies can manufacture new variant-specific jabs, especially at scale. The Omicron variant has now been detected in locations from the UK to Spain and Canada, which shows the difficulties of curtailing these new strains. There have yet to be any Omicron cases discovered here in the States, but travel from 8 countries has been restricted. And Germany's incoming vice chancellor called for a nationwide lockdown for the unvaccinated to check the latest surge in infections. Here now to break it down with us is Emily Wilkins, joining us from Washington, D.C. Emily, thank you so much for being here. Tell me about the White House messaging on this, because as always, Biden has to walk a tightrope here, right? He can't cause too much public panic, and he also can't say anything that's going to get people to mistrust the vaccine even more than some folks already do. So what is the messaging looking like here?
So what we heard from President Biden when he addressed the nation yesterday is saying that people should be concerned, but they should not panic about this new Omicron variant. Obviously, a lot that we don't yet know. We don't really know how transmissible it's going to be. We don't know what the mutations are going to result in. We don't know how safe those who are vaccinated currently are going to be from this new strain. And President Biden is planning on addressing the nation again on Thursday, really detailing what the administration's strategy will be as the winter is approaching. But one thing that President Biden really did focus on was vaccinations, getting boosters, continuing testing. He did pledge that there would not be any new lockdowns. And I think that's something that's really come as the administration is acknowledging that an increasingly higher percentage of Americans are getting vaccinated, certainly nowhere close to 100, but it has been steadily increasing. And also simply the fact that President Biden, he really painted himself both as a candidate and during his first year in office as the president that would get the U.S. beyond the pandemic. And I think to a certain extent, the lower approval ratings that we've seen with him reflect, at least in part, the feeling and frustration that Americans have that their lives aren't back to normal even after the vaccines and after masking for so long.
Yeah, it certainly feels like this virus is never going away. To get some clarity on that, I want to bring you in, Anthony Squazin, joining us from South Africa. Anthony, thanks for being here this morning. Tell me a little bit about what we know about how this virus and how this strain was uncovered and what that tells us about how this mutation is different from, Delta, Mu, and all the other ones we've seen.
Okay, well, earlier this month, actually pretty early November, laboratory analysts started noticing that there was something different when they were processing COVID-19 tests. Basically, they weren't picking up the so-called S gene, which is the gene that produces the spike protein. But everything else was coming back positive. So it took them a while, but they had a look at it and got the National Institute for Communicable Diseases involved. And it looked like that protein had mutated. So then they realized they had a new variant. So that's how it was discovered. And that came along with a big spike in infections. It's been very quiet here for about 2 months. There's been almost no infections, very low rates, 200-300 a day nationally in a country of 60 million. And then suddenly we saw it jump to 800, and then it's quickly escalated to about 3,000 a day. And it's concentrated in Tshwane, which is the area around the capital, which is not far from Johannesburg, just 30 miles or so.
So, Anthony, how desperate is South Africa for more vaccines versus how much they just need more people to take these vaccines? The vaccination uptake rate is pretty low there.
Yeah, they don't have a problem with vaccine availability right now. Yeah. It did a few months ago, but now there is a surplus of vaccines. There's just a lot of hesitancy, and a lot of people are not taking it, particularly younger people. So overall, I think about 36% of adults have taken are fully vaccinated now. They've just extended vaccinations to 12 to 17-year-olds, but the biggest problem is between 18 and 35.
Anthony, we have seen some of President Biden's former advisors on COVID-19 criticize the ban that's currently being put into place, the travel ban for South Africa and the 7 other countries, saying that this could discourage other countries who find new strains of the variant from coming forward, that this travel ban could be a bit of a punishment. Is that the case? Is that a real concern here?
I think it's a massive concern. South Africa did find the variants, but it doesn't mean it came from here. South Africa has very advanced gene sequencing institutes because it's had an AIDS epidemic and a very large TB epidemic for years. And a lot of money is being plowed in from international institutions, and some of the world's best virologists and gene sequencers live here. So as a result, they find variants pretty quickly. Now, that variant could well be spread globally already. It may have come from somewhere else. Nobody knows. So South Africa has had a pretty bad time economically because of the pandemic. We're about to start our summer holiday season where we get a lot of tourists from Europe and the US who spend a lot of money. And obviously all those flights have now been cancelled and no tourists are coming. It's likely that a lot of jobs will be threatened. There's 1.5 million jobs in the tourism industry. A lot of companies have already gone bust, and it's likely we'll see a lot more follow that route.
Yeah, this morning we heard from Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He praised South Africa for their handling of, sequencing the virus and really being on top of being transparent about these discoveries when these variants and mutations do come up. But he also defended U.S. travel restrictions. So, Emily, I want to go back to you on this because I'm curious, the U.S. is really behind other countries when it comes to virus sequencing. We're really slow to catch these mutations, again, compared with countries around the globe. To what extent is that good or bad for Washington?
Well, I think what the Biden administration has been really focusing on is being a place for vaccines and to be a place that sends vaccines globally. I mean, granted, the U.S. has come under criticism, the fact that we are now giving people booster shots when so much of the world has yet to be vaccinated is certainly a critique out there. At the same point, the Biden administration has sent a number of shots, millions really, to a number of third world and other countries. And really, the South African, the variant, the Omicron variant, rather, that has really highlighted the fact that even the U.S., we can get as much of our population vaccinated as possible. But until we are able to get the world vaccinated, there's no truly going back to normal.
And Antony, speaking of, the vaccination situation, we never tweaked booster shots for the Delta variant, for example. Are we going to have to do that for Omicron? What do we know about that?
Well, I think all the companies are looking at that. We've seen reports out of Moderna saying they're going to be looking at producing a new vaccine as soon as possible, probably sometime early next year, but it'll take them a long time to get production up to scale. I think one of the other companies said it would take about 100 days. I think everyone's scrambling, but obviously it's going to take time. It's not an easy task.
Yeah, of course. And speaking of tasks that aren't so easy, Emily, the president heads to Minnesota today to promote his recently passed infrastructure bill. To what extent do you think that speech has shifted in the past 48 hours? And also, does Biden get to define his presidency by his beloved infrastructure bill, or is COVID really going to make that a big challenge?
COVID has been a challenge for President Biden from the very start, and he knew that it would be. And it's not just COVID even at this point. It's the higher inflation that Americans are dealing with, higher prices at the pump, higher prices at the grocery store. I mean, these are the day-to-day things that are really impacting Americans. And while there is a lot of support out there for that infrastructure bill, for improvement to roads, to bridges, to broadband, the fact of the matter is that this isn't something that Americans see an immediate improvement on. We're going to have to get to construction season next spring to really see a number of these projects go underway, and even then it could be a while. And when it comes to what Americans think of the president, a lot of it has to do with that day-to-day stuff.
Right. Nobody likes to drive over a pothole, but it's hard to remember that 2 years from now that's going to get better when day to day we're dealing with this virus still. Antony, really quick final question from you. What should we be watching for in the next 2 weeks, especially coming out of South Africa in particular?
Well, the institutes here are really working very fast, as they put it, at lightning speed, to test the virus against the existing vaccines to see what the efficacy is, and also to determine just how transmissible it is. Is it more transmissible than Delta, for instance? So far, it does appear to be very transmissible. The disease so far, we've seen a lot of people with infections, but quite mild. But most of them have been quite young, who, younger people don't normally get affected that badly. So we're going to have to wait and see if it spreads to more vulnerable segments of the population, and we may have a serious problem on our hands.
And really quickly, it does look like the loss of smell and taste is a little bit less of the case with Omicron, right? So should people watch out for different symptoms?
Yes. What doctors are saying here, and the head of the Medical Association, is that it's more characterized by fatigue, headaches, maybe a scratchy throat, but not always. And those are the main symptoms. Unlike Delta, where you had elevated pulse levels, struggled with oxygen, and had a lot of night sweats, things like that. That's not what we're seeing. So far, they've said it's pretty mild. And as I said, The initial breakout was in college students, 20 to 25 years old
Yeah.
at most. Normally pretty healthy individuals who would probably fight off an infection a lot more easily than other people.
Right. So we're going to have to continue to see how it develops. Bloomberg's Anthony Squazin joining us in Johannesburg, and Bloomberg Government's Emily Wilkins here for us in D.C. Thank you both so much for your time.